Welcome to the Red Barrels podcast. We're up to episode 13. Unlucky for some, and also us, and also you, because you're now going to listen to the Red Barrels podcast. We're all here as normal.
Sorry, deprecating start.
Hey,
this is the punishment for the many crimes you've committed.
That thing that you did a while back, this is your punishment, listener. That thing that you did, feel
thing
bad.
When you were like in your early teens, do you remember
it?
I
do you remember that
sort of
really
comes back to you
embarrassing
sometimes.
thing?
Yeah, when you're just trying
you were
to sleep.
trying to impress that person you fancied.
Oh,
and
yeah.
you embarrassed yourself, and you've never forgotten that one day.
Really, really embarrassing.
Now it's time for you to pay the price.
Yes, you must reckon with your crimes, listener.
So get ready for it. Get ready for it. As always, I'm Alex, and who is joining me?
Oops, you got Soph. I'm so freely, Sofie. And who else do we have?
Well, you've got me, you've got Ed. It's me, Ed. Hi everyone, thanks for listening again. You're in for a real treat, despite what we said at the start. That was just a test, and you've got past the test now. Yeah. And as a reward, you get the lovely caramelly goodness of the episode itself.
You know what? I was lying before. This is going to be the best podcast episode ever recorded by anyone.
Wow.
So yeah. Just look forward to that.
There's just no in between with you, is there, Alex? It's either the worst thing that's ever happened, or it's the best thing that's ever happened.
Or it's you meeting Tom Nicholas.
I can't just be like, yeah, what's you meeting
Tom Nicholas is the greatest person ever to live.
Stop!
If we ever get like a guest who cancels on us, they're the worst person to have ever lived. Tom Nicholas wouldn't do that because, as previously mentioned, he's the best person ever. But you know,
I'm so sorry I brought it up.
Anyway.
Right, yeah.
Enough of this nonsense. It's time to get on to business, and that business is character class consciousness.
Taking care of business.
Yes, we're taking care of business with character class consciousness, and we've got a doozy, political hypothetical for the ages. And of course, the question is, which of these two video game characters is the most proletarian? Mm-hmm. And the two in question are Birdo from the Super Mario game versus Gaz/Ghost from the Call of Duty Modern Warfare games. What's it gonna be? I'm gonna ask Sofie now, because she's clearly looking up these characters on the internet.
I don't know what they are. What did you say the other one was from? Did you say Call of Duty?
Yes, Call of Duty. Yeah, these are hardly obscure. Mario and Call of Duty, are they possibly the two biggest video game franchises?
I don't know.
You know, I'm
Grand Theft Auto is pretty big.
I'm a girl. I don't play video games.
I'm just saying arguably, right?
I'm a woman. I don't play video games. It'd be ridiculous.
Tetris over there. Tamagotchis over there.
Yeah.
I feel it
only play the
poorly
Sims.
that you're pulling this card only 13 episodes into our podcast.
Our video game political podcast. I'm like, what are games?
Yeah,
What is that?
What is politics?
All right, Ed, let's hear your astute political view, since Sofie needs time to formulate them.
Well, it feels like you're trying to do a trick on us, or you're going to reveal your trap card, because
there's no trap cards, eh?
One of them is clearly involved in a series of imperialist wars around the world, and the other one's Birdo. So it feels like by default, Birdo probably has to win.
Well, I mean, when Birdo was first introduced in Super Mario Bros. 2,
to Japan.
Also,
US,
not Japan. In Japan, Birdo technically appeared in Doki Doki Panic, the original form. Everyone knows this. Birdo was a bad guy, an enemy.
Yes.
She shot these weird egg things at you.
But as far as I know, I have played Super Mario Bros. 2, and I don't recall Birdo doing any war crimes. So I think that gives Birdo the edge overall.
Okay. I mean, one might argue that Gaz is, an employee. Gaz just trying to find work, and it's got to be pointed out. Gaz has two names, also Ghost, because Gaz dies in the first Modern Warfare game, and then just weirdly returns again with now a skull kind of mask on, and is called Ghost, and is just the same character because Gaz never talked.
Is that what happens? I don't even remember that.
Yes, that's what happened. Well, this is the original Modern Warfare game, not these remakes. So they may well have done the same thing.
I've not played the remakes. I've only played Modern Warfare 1, 2, and 3 from back in the day when I was a youth.
That's what happened. It was kind of like an in-joke. But, he's a working, so, he's probably maybe he wasn't drafted, but, probably got out of school, not great GCSEs. He's British. He's in the SAS. He worked his way up. It doesn't necessarily, he doesn't necessarily endorse the actual military action. I'm just making a devil's advocate argument here.
Modern Warfare 1, he wasn't conscripted.
Well, that's certainly true. Although, by the end of Modern Warfare 2,
he probably would have been conscripted.
The United States is literally being invaded by Russia. We don't know what happened to Britain at the time. Probably there would have been conscription at some point in those kind of circumstances.
Yeah.
I'm just this is devil's advococate stuff here. I'm not.
I don't know. I thought you were trying to prank me. I thought you were going to bait me with the obvious answer, which is Birdo, and then you're going to be like, "Just kidding. Birdo is actually a member of the bourgeois class and owns all of the means of production in the world that Doki Doki Panic is set in." And then I would have felt like a fool. But I see that I'm not a fool, and in fact, Alex, if anyone's a fool. No, I'm not going to say it. That's too harsh.
Well, thank you.
Too much respect for you, Alex.
Thank you. No, I think we need to hear from Sofie. She's percolated. She's compared these characters with her deep knowledge of Marxist theory.
Yes.
And now it's coming out. Let's go.
I'm not sure if this is relevant, but are we both aware that Birdo is trans?
Oh shit! Yeah. I was gonna see. This is gonna be my big test to see if you were gonna identify Birdo's true trans nature. Yes, in the original Super Mario Brothers 2, she is remarked in the manual, quite not in a not terribly enlightened manner.
Yes, I was gonna say Japan's not got a great track record.
I mean, to be fair, it was the early 80s. Or mid 80s, I think, maybe.
Japan still doesn't have a good track record.
Yeah, I'm sure. But she's marked as, quote, a boy who thinks she's a girl. Or he's a girl, possibly. I'm not entirely sure of what pronouns they use.
Yeah.
But since then, she has been taken up as something of a trans icon by many. It's true. There's a few examples of this in gaming of
but
not great examples that have been.
Just being trans does not make you proletariat.
That's true.
Caitlyn Jenner.
This is important to remember. Honestly, I don't know anything about Birdo's work situation. I also don't know that much about Gaz, but I also think that, considering, I know we don't like the military on the left, and neither do I. But we also have to remember that a lot of people do end up in the military because it is a way of having your actual basic services provided for, like education, food, accommodation, etc. A lot of people do end up joining the military for reasons like that because of financial instability. So there's a chance that Gaz isn't just like a bloodthirsty person who's in the military. Chances maybe he's just looking for, some services that his government should actually provide him, but instead is only provided by the military. So I don't know.
I would say
I don't know.
Having scarcity or a lack of, needing to have a job is not necessarily. I don't think that makes Gaz more of a member of the proletariat.
No, absolutely.
So it's a bit like people who say they are a landlord because their pension's not high enough, so they need money for retirement. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I understand and sympathize with your motivation in one respect, but that doesn't make you
proletariat. Yeah.
So I would posit even more hard than before.
I guess I'll say Birdo. Yeah, Birdo.
So the consensus is Birdo?
Yes.
Oh, I'm going to say, congratulations, you're both right. It is Birdo. But not for the reason you've identified. It's because Gaz, who I mentioned, he's also known as Ghost because he's dead. And you cannot be proletariat if you are dead.
That's goofy.
You're outside
That's
of the class
fucking
system
goofy.
if you've decided. Hey, I don't make the rules. I didn't write capital. Look, I'm not the way. I'm not the.
Is an unidentifiable creature. Does Birdo get to be part of in terms of
Birdo
prehistoric dinosaur / bird?
Birdo.
What?
She drives carts. She plays tennis. Technically, in Super Mario Bros. 2, she's in the land of Subcon, which is a dream world. So So
to be clear, dream characters are members of the working class, but dead people are not.
Yeah,
okay,
cool. Look.
Right,
I'm glad we've cleared that
I've
up.
read more of Capital and more closely than you have, and all other associated work. You know,
I didn't like that
everyone knows.
Name some other work, Alex.
Hey now.
This is just time for you to Google.
Everyone knows dream
Harry
people.
Potter and the Order of Phoenix.
Dream people. And let's say, I mean, it's getting, a bit transphobic from you two, kind of doubting my knowledge on this matter.
Wow.
All right. No.
Wow.
You know what? I think we should drop this here before you get yourselves in further hot water.
I think you should drop this, before you get yourself into
It's a bad look for you, Alex. Really bad look.
So let's get on to the real business, which is talking about actual video games, not the characters, but maybe the characters in the video games. We'll find out. First up, going back full on retro to the early 2000s. It's our good friend Ed.
Hello. Yes, I've been playing God of War, the original, the 2005 version, developed by Santa Monica Studios, the iconic PlayStation 2 exclusive, which, to confirm, it does have a character in it. So, we're still talking about video game characters, don't you worry.
I should also just want to say, I apologize for saying it's early 2000s. That's clearly the mid 2000s. Sorry.
Yeah, come on, Alex. Yes, I'll be honest, guys. I had to use an emulator for this one. I don't normally use a lot of emulators. I'm not a big emulator boy, but this one, there appears to be no way of playing the game on current generation hardware.
Is that true? Are you sure there's no PS2 version for the PS5?
Mm-hmm. Yep, there used to be. You used to be able to play it through that PlayStation premium subscription thing.
Oh yeah.
But they took it off last year, which led people to speculate that was in preparation for a 20th anniversary re-release of God of War 1, 2, and 3. But so far, there's been no announcements about that, and there's there's lots of rumors that might happen, but so far there's nothing. So as of right now, there is no way to play God of War 1 or God of War 2 on current generation hardware. God of War 3, I think, is still on there. So
yeah, that's a PS3 game. So
that's
different.
That's right. So if you like the sound of this game, tough. No, you can surf the high seas, I'm sure. Yeah. So God of War, it's an action adventure game. You spend almost all of your time fighting through hordes of enemies using a series of button combinations, and you spend some time doing some mild puzzles, and you spend even less time doing some milder platforming elements. You are playing as Kratos, who, over the course of the game, you get a bit of his backstory. You learn that this guy was a Spartan captain who, when facing death, called on the god of war of Greek mythology, Ares, and promised to serve Ares if he spared him and his men, and gave him the strength to defeat his enemies. And speaking of strength, incidentally, guys, the word Kratos actually means strength in ancient Greek. So
we're learning things right now.
There's a fun
fact. Don't get this from other podcasts.
Yeah, thank God I did that classical civilization A level. I knew it would come in handy. So yeah, Kratos from then has to fight whoever Ares tells him to fight until one day Ares tricks him into killing his own wife and child, which is a real no-no. Ares thinks that this will free Kratos to become the ultimate warrior, but for some reason, Kratos doesn't respond too well, and in fact swears vengeance on Ares. But at the same time, Kratos is cursed by an oracle to relive the murder of his family over and over again. So that's the sort of background of the story that we're playing through. We jump forward 10 years and the game begins. Kratos is on one last mission for the Greek gods with the goal of killing Hydra on behalf of Poseidon. Then he makes a deal with Athena. If he can kill Ares, she will remove the curse. So that's the story of the game. From here on, the game, that's kind of an interesting backstory. I'm there for that. That sounds cool. I'd say most of the actual story in the game itself is a bit more like old school video game, a little bit more perfunctory than I would like. Mainly the goal is you need to go and get a MacGuffin, i.e. the Pandora's box, which will apparently give Kratos the power he needs to defeat Ares, the god of war. So it's sort of like, after kind of a cool backstory that's revealed as the game goes on, the actual events in the game are a bit more boring, I would say. But story aside, The core gameplay loop is, as I say, fighting, which is done with a series of button combinations you unlock as you go through the game. This is implemented pretty well. I mean, God of War is quite a popular, quite a famous game, and this is kind of why. Like the button combination thing, it's just quite fun. It's quite engaging. It's executed quite well. You can't just button mash your way through, which is a big plus. You actually do have to learn some of the combinations to get through some of the tests later on, which means you have to actually take the game seriously and engage with it a little bit. It pulls you into this quite engaging rhythm, I would say, as you go on, as you're like clearing these rooms of enemies. And that's sort of the main thing you're doing for most of the game, so it's good that that's quite engaging and you get caught up in the rhythm of the fight. I would say it was definitely enough to keep me engaged for the 8 or so hours it took me to beat the game, but I probably would have got bored if the game had gone on like much longer than that. But that's okay. The game didn't go on much longer than that, so I didn't get bored. The fighting's not perfect though. How it often works is you wail on the enemy, you do your button combinations enough times and it knocks the guy over, and then the big circle button appears over the enemy's head, and if you go over to him and press circle, then it like enters the sort of finishing mode, and what you have to do then is you have to press the circle button again and 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 again really, really quickly until Kratos forces his knife down into the enemy's neck and kills him, which is okay once or twice. But given this is like every enemy in the game, you have to do this. I ended up having to like rotate through my fingers when we entered like that mode of which one was going to be pressing the button, because it was like genuinely quite uncomfortable on my fingers by that point. I mean, maybe you could argue that the kind of like pain and frenetic rushing to kill the creature, like maybe that connects you more closely with what Kratos is going through. But I think you'd have to be more generous than I am to give them that. I also, on the fighting, my other minor complaint with it is the monsters come in waves. So you'll go to a new area and you'll kill all of the monsters in that area, but like each monster, they'll respawn like a set number of times, and you don't know what that is beforehand. So maybe you have to kill a creature 2 or 3 times and then it's dead for good, which first of all felt like kind of an uninteresting way of extending playtime. Like it's like you've killed this enemy, but can you kill it again? Oh, you've killed the enemy twice, but can you kill it 3 times? Like, yeah, I can kill it 3 times. It's a bit boring. And it also means there are certain rooms which initially seem like regular rooms, but they're actually one of the puzzles I mentioned earlier. But they're also full of enemies. So I'm in there, I kill the enemies, and then they come back and I kill them again, and they come back and I kill them again, and this happens again and again and again until I realize, okay, well, this isn't a room that you can just beat by clearing the enemies. I've got to go and do some puzzles or something to advance, which means maybe I've killed the same set of enemies like 5, 6, 7 times before I realized that was a complete waste of my time and I should have been over there doing a puzzle. So that's kind of an annoying thing too. But those two little annoyances aside, the fighting, it's sort of furious and fast-paced, rhythmic. It works pretty well. The game is also quite well known for having a few quick-time events to allow for spectacular and cinematic moments during boss fights. Quick-time events, I feel like they've got a bit of a bad reputation these days. I feel like a lot of people got quite tired of them in the sort of late part of the noughties, maybe. Like they were overly relied on by a lot of games as sort of a cheap way of doing the cinematic thing, but without them having to come up with actual gameplay to back it up. I feel like it works quite well here. It's you have a like regular boss fight, like it's not like they've skimped on giving you boss fight content, and then instead of the boss fight ending with just purely a cinematic, there's the quick time events in place of like a final cinematic, which sort of, I think that's basically the best way they can possibly be used. They give you a little bit of input while he's doing the big final massive killing thing, so it's still, yeah, it's a way of keeping you engaged through the big spectacular moments. Any more of that kind of thing, and you begin to feel a bit bored and feel like they've just robbed gameplay of you. But the amount that's in this game, I feel like it worked well. And yeah, I mean, talking about being spectacular, obviously the game's 20 years old, so the visuals are somewhat limited. I guess that's part of the reason why quite a lot of people want that remake. But even that aside, the game is still quite spectacular. Like I just still feel kind of impressed by it. The opening and the ending of the game especially have a lot of those spectacular elements, which sort of took me in. For instance, the game opens with the battle with the Hydra that I mentioned. To fight the Hydra, you're like sailing on the seas, and you've got to jump from boat to boat, killing enemies on the way, and then climb up the rigging, and then you're attacking its massive heads. And there's just a sort of sense of scale and the sort of epic dramatic feeling of like when you're on you're on the sea fighting this massive creature, and it just sort of sells it quite well, and you sort of feel like, oh yeah, this is cool. It gives you that kind of vibe. And it feels like really the whole game is designed to get you to go, oh, yeah, this is cool. And like it kind of works. Like you do say that sometimes. I say that all the time. I'm always there saying, oh, yeah.
Famously.
That said, the middle of the game are quite a lot less spectacular. You got the cool Hydra bit at the start. At the end, there's boss fights that are pretty cool. In the middle of the game, you spend quite a lot of time underground or like in old temples or swimming through the sewers of Athens, which doesn't quite have the same sense of scale and spectacle. It's sort of a slightly boring middle section. I kind of also the story momentum kind of stops because the start of the game you're getting the backstory, and at the end you're sort of resolving stuff to a certain extent. But during the middle, when literally just all you're doing is go to a place, to get to the Pandora's box, you need to go over here and get this. Okay, you go over here and then you're in a not very spectacular place, and they're like, oh, well, now you've got that. You actually also need to go and get this. And it's just sort of like, yeah, okay. Like I would really quite like to sort of cut to the bit where we get the Pandora's box and then it gets dramatic. But yeah, you're basically, so there's just sort of a series of steps required for you to get that Pandora's box. And that's not a particularly engaging bit of the game. And then as an aside, I'm going to spoil the ending of the game for a few seconds here. So come back, skip forward like 10 to 15 seconds. It made me laugh that the thing that the Pandora's box did, that you spend the whole game getting to, is it made you really big. It just makes you big enough that you can fight areas, and that's the whole thing.
Is that like true canon to the Greek myth, Ed, with your classical education background?
No, Alex, it's not. The Pandora's box did not make you really big. It gave you secrets of the gods, like fire.
Like
so that was
only the gods know how to be really big. And,
really big.
Now Kratos does too.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, beyond the fighting, there are some fairly straightforward platforming and puzzle sections, which is sort of not really what the players are there for, and it's not really what the developers are there for either. And you can sort of tell that, like, they're not, they're nothing great, but they're also not terrible. They work well enough to sort of split up the fighting sections. Like, they're sort of slightly perfunctory, but you know what you're getting into with God of War. Like, it's not you're not doing it for that. It's sort of fine that the platforming is just sort of fine, if that makes sense. It didn't really undermine the game experience for me at all. The only thing that did undermine my gaming experience with those bits, though, is the camera is very 2005 PlayStation 2 era, in that most of the time it's kind of ahead of its time. Actually, it's quite good. It sort of pans around to give you like the coolest view of what's going on, so you can always like get a sense of scale at the right points, where Kratos seems quite small and the thing you're up against is huge, or whatever. Like, it's quite good at giving you the best view in terms of the most cool looking view, the most dramatic view. But it doesn't always give you the best view in terms of where's the next platform that I'm jumping to. So like they're quite, especially if you ever need to go back for any reason. Like, it might be that the platform is sort of behind where you as a player are, if that makes sense. Like, Kratos is looking at it, but he's looking at you, and the platform is, so you need to sort of do a leap of faith into nowhere and hope that the platform's where you're sort of hoping it's going to be. And also, it's sort of, the camera can sort of swing about quite a bit. Like, I remember there was this one section where you were swimming through the sewers of Athens, you're sort of swimming up, and then the camera like swung around as you arrived at like another bit of the pipe. And that meant I literally, because I'm just swimming through this pipe, I've got no idea which way I came from or which way I'm going, because like the pipe, like the camera spun around, and I don't know, it happened with the platforming too. Like, you're jumping from one platform to another, the camera swings around, and it's like, at what point am I supposed to like adjust my control? Like, I was originally jumping to the right, so I was holding the right button, but now I'm jumping forwards from the new camera angle.
It's a very 2000s issue.
Very 2000s
yeah.
issue. I mean, it doesn't, as I say, it doesn't ruin the game, but you wouldn't make it like that now, I'm sure. And just to give you like my overall feeling on the game, I think it largely manages to stay like on the right side of cringe. Like, it has elements which feel quite self-serious, which can lend themselves to being a bit cringy. And you're playing like a big man who's having like a big sad time. You know what I mean? But overall, it has some bits that are self-serious, but overall it doesn't feel like it takes itself too seriously. It's a game that feels like it could have been designed in a lab to appeal to a 14-year-old boy. Like, the lead is hyper masculine and it's like hyper violent. In fact, you're often violent for no reason at all. Like, in the opening section of the game, you have to kill the captain of this ship for no reason. Like, he's not a bad guy. You just got to kill him. I don't know why. And there's a bit later on in the game where you have to kill some prisoners in order to advance, like for no other reason than that killing prisoners is super dark and cool. You know what I mean? Super edgy. And when you kill things, there's like a big splat of this pool of blood, and it's like, wow. The game is obviously leaning into the like jaded hero trope as well, like a hero who is wounded by some crime they committed in the past, but also like they're committing plenty more as you're playing through the game, so they can't have been that upset about it.
But apparently in one of the sequels there's a bit where like to progress you have to like stop these gears from moving, and the way Kratos does it is that he literally just grabs a woman like who's up like a civilian woman who just happens to be there and just slams her into the gears.
Well, that brings me as well to, I mean, the gender politics of this game
Yeah,
is not
What the
great.
fuck? Oh my god.
It's not great. I know, that might shock you. It doesn't really feature very many women, and I would say a very high percentage of the women that it does feature are topless.
Yeah.
So it's literally the most 14-year-old boy.
That
But
is
this is the
possibly
game that
imagine.
famously had the rhythm action sex minigame.
Yeah,
right?
where you jump up on the bed and have sex. Yeah, and you got to like rhythmically press the...
Really? Is that a
Yeah,
thing?
yeah.
You see, there's like the camera pans to a vase on the side, and you see the vase shake as
You're
you get
joking!
further. No, that's
oh
what
my
happens. Yeah.
god, 2000s. I love you.
It's-
That's amazing.
It's of a certain era, shall we say.
Southern era.
Yeah. And yeah, with the jaded hero thing, like that's often a trope that I find can be a bit obnoxious, like especially when it's real world based, like it's, you know, maybe a member of the American military who's gone to Iraq and killed a bunch of children and now they're really sad about it.
Sad about it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he
killed
basically
Gwen.
got so angry that he accidentally killed his family. That's basically what happens, isn't it?
Well, he's sort of tricked into that by Ares. Yeah, like kind of he got so angry that he killed his... Well, that's kind of his thing. He got super angry and did a lot of killing, and then Ares made that happen around his family. Like,
Oh, I see.
yeah, yeah. I don't
But
know.
like if you just noticed that, you know, the face of the person he was about to punch into mist, or whatever.
The red mist descended, and you know they don't go into too much detail about the mechanics of it. But I will say, Greek myth. You know, there's precedent for
Yeah, that's true.
gods
That's
like
true.
making people do that. Like Ajax goes on a killing spree when he loses a competition to Odysseus, I believe. So yeah, it's kind of authentic to the source material in that kind of way. Like the ancient Greek myths, like they are a bunch of bastards, and Kratos is a bastard. Like there's no getting around it. He's a real twat. I think if you're in the mood for something that's puerile escapism, that's like a power fantasy where you're a like emotionally wounded Spartan demigod who's like a massive guy who punches stuff to death and they explode in a pile of blood. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to play that every now and again. Like sometimes I've just literally played this one, you know. I don't regret playing it. I don't agree with the
Just
sort
really in
of...
the mood for punching people until they explode into a pile of blood.
Exactly.
You know?
But you know, if you're in the market for that kind of game where you're just playing a big man and you turn your brain off and you go punch and slice, then like this is definitely you could definitely do worse than this game. It's very tight. It knows what it wants to be and it executes on that. And it's probably partially as a result of a lot of freedom that Santa Monica Studios were given by Sony in the production process. They just basically said, make what you want, and that was sort of it. Because they had a lot of control over what they made, and it sort of paid off because this is quite a well liked game. So yeah, if you're looking for a game that requires you turn your brain off, much like Kratos, you get caught up in the scale and the frenzy, then, and as long as you go in expecting like a competent, somewhat spectacular game, that's sort of like a B movie style game, then you won't be disappointed. Like it is fun. But if you go in expecting any kind of depth, or like, I think the 2018 God of War game, which I've also played and I enjoyed quite a lot more than this game. I have played it. Yeah, I really enjoyed that game, and there's like a bit more circumspection. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
A bit more of an acknowledgement that Kratos is a bastard. He did a bunch of bad things, and he still will do more bad things, but he does feel like he's basically kind of a twat. Like that's kind of the vibe in God of War 2018. You're not going to get anything like that kind of emotional depth here. What you mainly get here is, I'm really bloody angry. Like that. And there's room in life for playing games like that. And if you want to play a game like that, this is a good one. Maybe they will do a re-release in 2025. If they do, you could do worse than pick it up.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not supporting the politics of the game because the politics are not great. But,
well,
you know.
I would recommend to our listeners that they may want to check out Jacob Geller, as a YouTuber, has a podcast that he does called Something Rotten, and they play and talk about. He has a weird definition of what counts as a rotten game, something that has some sort of fucked upness to it. And he did the first 3 God of War games recently, and so that's kind of how I know about these games, because I did play the original God of War back in the day when it came out, and I didn't get very far with it. I have just an aversion to combos. As soon as I have to go punch, hard punch, or whatever, square, triangle, and then I have to like switch them up between them and stuff like that, I just don't do that. I will just play the entire game doing square.
I'm exactly
that would make
the
it quite
same.
hard, I feel like.
So I didn't really get into it, but it seemed pretty cool from what I did play. But I do remember, there is a big doldrum in the middle of it. I think that's about where I quit out. But apparently, as they said on their podcast, basically it seems like the first game they do push him being like sad a bit more, like he's upset about what happened with his family, and he's a bit of like there is a little bit more introspection, unlike the next 2 games where he just gets worse and worse, and it just becomes almost. That's where that
they're gonna if they're gonna reduce the amount of introspection for games 2 and 3. I'm in for a bumpy ride if I play that.
That's where like the bit where you throw the woman in the gears comes up and stuff like that. It's just like it just turns into just all right. He just murders everyone, and by the end of the 3 games, he murders literally every member of the Greek pantheon that you like are likely to have heard of. Every single Greek god is dead at the end of those games, which is why they had to move it Viking gods for the reboot, because there were literally no more Greek gods there.
Oh, that's interesting.
God really is dead.
But like in that
we have killed him
in that 2018 game. Like there is like a metatextual element to it, where like it's not only is Kratos like looking like embarrassed about the shit he did back in the Greek days, because his son finds an urn, an old Greek urn with him on it, and he's like murdering a bunch of people, and he's like, "What's that about, Dad?" And he's like, that's also a bit of a metatextual thing of the developers saying, "Well, we've grown up a bit, haven't we? Maybe we probably wouldn't throw a bunch of women into gears now."
I sure hope not. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
You also, when I told you I'd played this game, Alex, you said that you thought this game had a weird ending. Do you want to go into that?
Well, spoilers for our listeners on the ending. As I said, I haven't seen the ending, but I mainly heard it from that podcast I mentioned. That at the end of the game, they didn't set up for sequels at all. They had a pretty definitive ending that pretty much would end an entire series, but they just kind of retcon it a bit for the next games. But he not only does he kill Ares, the god of war, and become the god of war himself, he becomes like the god of war for all time, and is the god of war for all wars, including like modern wars, including like the then ongoing Iraq war and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's true. He becomes the god of war. I think it was implied the god of war is the god of war, like full stop. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't think there's a difference between what Kratos did and what Ares can do. Although I have watched stuff where people speculate like maybe Kratos is a more like angry and aggressive kind of guy than Ares. So maybe him doing that accounts for the increase in global wars in the last few millennia versus the years before. You know what I mean? And yes, they do. If I remember, I could be making this up. I think they do a little like flash of like a depiction of other bits of war that are going to happen over the next few centuries that we've obviously lived through. So yeah, they do more or less confirm that he's at play in all of those horrible wars of aggression that the Americans have perpetrated, and other wars, of course, are available. So yeah, that's true. He's the god of war for all wars.
Thanks, which is
Kratos.
Not ideal. Thanks for all those wars.
Thanks, Kratos. Yeah, great work.
Would you play a remastered version?
No, because I feel like I've played this once. Like it was like perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Like it's good if that's what you're in the mood for.
And did you play this as a kid? I'm sorry you mentioned that already, but did you play it as a kid? Not at all.
No, I didn't. I didn't actually have a PlayStation until the PlayStation 4. I was a Nintendo boy growing up. So yeah, I just sort of, this is like a classic game that I sort of wanted to go back and revisit. I was aware of like what the basic vibe was going to be, and like I say, I played the 2018 version. So I was just sort of intrigued, and if you turn your brain off, it's all right. But no, I probably wouldn't replay it. I mean, maybe in 10, 15 years time, maybe I'd want to. If they bring it out, I'd play God of War 2 as a remake, probably, like, to see what that's like. Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
probably not.
Again, if they bring one out, I'd probably recommend you play that rather than this. Like, this was, they've probably fixed the camera issues, you would imagine, and I don't know, and the sort of having to smash your fingers into smithereens to finish a guy off. Like punishment for my crime.
I'm always kind of interested in games like this because I do feel like, I feel like for a lot of people, obviously they remember them very fondly because like nostalgia obviously does a lot of the work in terms of remembering these very old games very fondly. So it's always very interesting to me to
there's the kind of mid to early, basically the 2000s, pretty much. It's sort of just like, I don't know, an interesting time of games. Just like they have a real kind of just vibe, just kind of took over then of like these like very dude bro games like these, and to a certain degree Halo and Gears of War.
Gears of War definitely is a huge example.
I mean,
I have played those. The tone is not dissimilar.
Yeah, and they're just like these like super masculine, very American as well games. That are like frequently at least vaguely militaristic. And there are other things going on in these games quite often. There's some science fiction stuff in the Halo games. Gears of War has like an undercurrent. There's like a whole lore that it's a parable about the Iraq War because this terrible thing, these weird alien things turned up because they were doing a war for resources over a fake oil substitute called emulsion. So that it's all built into that. So there are like things going on in these games, but also you're just like these incredibly meaty men who just kill huge numbers of people and board space marines. That was a big joke. And like it's kind of, I mean, I don't think you could say like, I don't know, 2010s games have a very clear style in that way, or 2020s games for that matter. There's been various trends and stuff, but there's like such a, the bloom lighting, the kind of brownness, such a like a really clear kind of aesthetic and vibe for those games. Not entirely good, to be totally honest. It's just interesting that exists.
Yeah, I mean, I go as far as to say it's probably broadly not great that was the sort of main trend in gaming, but it's one of those things like this. This is probably part of a trend of games which are not great, like it as that was the prominent game. But if you're exploring this one specific game now, 20 years later, like it's hard to sort of hold that against this specific game, that it was part of a wider thing of sort of ultimately somewhat tedious, big men doing big violence. But yeah, so that is my thoughts on the 2005 God of War game.
Nice.
Who's next? Like, I don't remember who we said is going to be next. But
just before you go,
I'm sure there'll be
just
fantastic.
Before we go, it's me next. But before we go, I just want to say something. I'll probably cut this, but since you were talking about it, do either of you know the original plans for the first sequel to Gladiator?
No.
So they brought out Gladiator 2, was it last year or something? Or maybe earlier this year, I can't remember. I didn't watch
last year, I think.
But there was an original plan for a sequel that would come out like soon after the original film came out, starring Russell Crowe. Now, the thing about that film, the original Gladiator, is that he dies at the end, right? So how are they going to make a sequel with Russell Crowe? And what the plan was, and there was a script for this and everything, was that Russell Crowe, in the Roman afterlife, becomes the God of War. I think it was literally going to be called Gladiator : God of War. And he it would then also run through the rest of history, and he's like had a hand in all the wars through history, up to like, including like you see him in like the Vietnam War, you see him in like probably the Iraq War back then. It's just like it's like a quite similar concept, but like starring Russell Crowe.
Let me add a bit more. Let me interject there then. I mean, I didn't mention this because this happens like very late on in the game, but that exact thing happens in this game.
Yeah.
That exact thing. There's a bit where Kratos gets killed by Ares. Like Ares finds out that he's about to get the Pandora's box, and he throws a big spear from miles away, and it kills Kratos. And Kratos goes to hell, crosses the river Styx, and is in Hades' domain, and he has to fight his way out and clamber back up into the real world. Well, again, I left that out just because that's one of the last things that happens in the game. Kind of a spoiler. But that sounds like it's exactly the same concept as the original.
I don't know which one came
which way around
the
that
same
happened.
time. I don't know.
Yeah. But when did Gladiator 1 come out? I don't know. Like 2005, 2003, something like that.
No, I think it was like
2001,
I think it was like
2000,
2001 or 2000. Yeah.
2000. Yeah.
Pre 9/11. So I guess it wouldn't have been maybe Iraq War.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just such a weird coincidence. I mean,
That
maybe
is weird.
God of War was based on that idea. They just thought they weren't going to make the movie, and they just decided to do that.
Maybe there's an underlying myth that we don't know about that
Maybe.
they're both based on separately.
Maybe they just like both pulled it from the collective unconscious. It was just an
Oh, yeah.
idea that had to come out of society.
Yeah, it's probably that,
Yeah,
actually.
good point. Good point. Good point. Good point. Me. All
Funny.
right. Shall we move on?
Let's.
Yeah, okay. So it's me. I'm talking about Death Stranding 2, the sequel to Death Stranding, which came out in 2019, and the most recent game from Hideo Kojima, the person I think they always describe as visionary game director, Hideo Kojima.
Is that an official title?
Well, like literally, I think like when he loves Jeff Keighley, so he always turns up at the Game Awards and all sorts of things like that, and they always call him visionary game director Hideo Kojima. Can I just ask what both of yours experience with Hideo Kojima games are? He made the Metal Gear Solid games.
I played a little bit of Metal Gear Solid when I was a child, but like not very seriously. I remember it being quirky.
I've not played any of the Metal Gear games at all, but there's a YouTuber I quite like. I'm not sure of his politics, but Some Call Me Johnny, who did like relatively long reviews of all those games. I've watched him for like God, nearly like 20 years. Honestly, it's been a really long time, like more than 15. So I've watched long reviews of the games, but I've never actually played any myself.
Oh, this is your PlayStation deficiency.
Yeah,
coming
for
out.
sure.
For
sure.
Yeah, so like kind of like a potted history, because you kind of really have to understand this whole story to understand what's going on in Death Stranding 2, especially. So he started out in the 80s making these a game called Metal Gear for the MSX, which was a Japanese only computer, and there were ports to some other systems. And then there was a sequel to that, and then he made a bunch of other games. And then on the PlayStation 1, when that came around, he made a third game that they called Metal Gear Solid, because it was in 3D, so it was solid. And
Clever.
This was very popular. It was huge and really kind of established new kind of concept of like having stories in games, and like he's famously got very long cutscenes. And these games are like they're military, kind of a military science fiction, but they're like sort of grounded. They're set in a sort of real world in the near future where the US military apparently just can't stop building giant robots to launch nuclear weapons from over and over again through hit.
That's pretty believable.
Later games are prequels. So it turns out that the US military and before then the Soviets were building giant robots to launch nuclear weapons back in the 60s. So we all know that definitely happened. But anyway, these games are famously weird in many places. They have incredibly complicated stories that like relate to like the history of like the real life history and like all these political themes. He made the kind of end of Solid Snake, who's the character in them, his story in Metal Gear Solid 4 on the PlayStation 3. But then he kind of could, and people thought, oh, maybe he's going to make something else. But no, he kept going back to Metal Gear, even though he kept saying that he wanted to make something else. He kept going back. He made Peace Walker, a game for the PSP, and then he finally made Metal Gear Solid 5, which was, he went open world on this one. It had a lot of really interesting gameplay, but the story is very truncated. And that's because Konami was kind of falling apart at the time. These games were made by Konami. And they basically, around about this time, decided they didn't really want to make video games anymore. Apparently, they made more money running a series of gyms in Japan. So they decided they wanted to focus on that and like pachinko games and stuff. So they basically fired Kojima and his whole team. They still kept a couple of groups for some things, like the Winning 11 football games and stuff, but almost all their game stuff were fired. So Hideo Kojima was like, the game was pretty much unfinished. It hasn't got a real ending to it. He's like detailed what the ending would have been in like videos and stuff. And he's now basically lost access to Metal Gear, the series he'd been working on like for most of his life. And so then he left and he started his own company. And so he finally could make something new. And that was Death Stranding in 2019. So what happens in Death Stranding, which is still the same basic setup for Death Stranding 2, is there has been a very strange apocalypse in which the world of the dead has started to break into the world of the living, which has led to the release of all these ghosts that are called BTs. The apocalypse is called the Death Stranding. And this is because it turns out that everyone after they die goes to a beach and they have their own individual beaches. But also there are collective beaches that lots of people can be on, and you can go to other people's beaches. This gets incredibly complicated.
Wow. Is that what really happens after you die?
I believe so, yes. I think it's...
oh, wow.
I think Hideo Kojima has determined the actual
that's what the Bible says,
truth of life after death.
And if you subscribe to the Red Barrels podcast, you can hang out with a beach with us and for eternity in the afterlife.
It's not a very nice beach. It's like black sand. It's quite unpleasant.
Ours is a nice.
That's
is a nice.
pretty cool.
Ours,
I like that. I like the
yeah.
sound of that.
This invasion of the world of the dead means that when two main things happen. One, when people die, if they aren't properly disposed of, like they're not cremated within like a day or two, they, instead of decaying, they turn into this black tar, and then a ghost comes out of them. And if that ghost grabs someone, that basically causes an atomic explosion. I guess it's not radioactive, but like a colossal explosion happens. And so, because no one's expecting this, a bunch of these happen at once. So there's explosions, they're called void outs in the game, happen all over the world. And then at the same time, a phenomenon called timefall begins, which means that when it rains, whatever the rain hits experiences accelerated time. So if it hits your hand, your hand gets all old, basically.
Oh.
And so this means that all infrastructure and everything on the surface is decayed very quickly.
People who sell umbrellas must make a killing in this world.
Oh yes, that's part of it. Genuinely. So this is just this kind of bizarre. I mean, I have scratched the surface on all this shit. It goes incredibly long and deep, very long cutscenes where people just do exposition for 10s, 20 minutes, 20s of minutes at a time. But your job, you're playing Sam Porter Bridges, played by Norman Reedus, the actor from The Walking Dead. I've got to say, I think he's probably the least attractive famous actor. I mean, kudos to him. He's a very unattractive man.
So. Norman's catching strays left, right, and center.
I mean, you see a lot of his face very close up, and I'm just like, this dude's a fucking movie star? I mean...
Attraction is very much relative, Alex. A lot of people are extremely into Norman Reedus.
Is that really true?
Yes, I'm not joking. I'm being very
Hideo
sincere.
Kojima is. That's certainly true.
No, there are like people who are really into Norman Reedus.
No, man. Well, I guess horses for courses, but
attraction is relative.
I think he's, I'm just saying for a movie star, I'm not
relative.
Comparing to me, I'm sure he's better looking than me, but for a movie star, I couldn't be a movie star. He's a movie star. Let's get some George Clooney's up here. That's what I'm saying.
People love him. No, I love actually that he's like not a conventionally, maybe I guess not a conventional looking man.
I'm saying
but
kudos to him. Kudos to him for making it work.
I'm not even kudos to him. I'm just like, I like seeing a main character in a thing that isn't just a fucking, what's that fucking Born Ultimatum? It's just that guy. That type, just brown head, handsome man in everything. I'm so bored of that.
All right, fair enough. Sorry for criticizing your looks, Norman Reedus. I say I'm not one to talk. I'm just saying I'm not a movie star. Anyway, so you play Norman Reedus, and he is a porter. So everyone in the world is basically living in these like little bunkers. The cities are all underground, and because the timefall destroys all infrastructure, the only way to get things anywhere is to literally walk them there. So you are basically a package delivery guy, and you pick things up and you take them to place. This game got quite famous for... Kojima has a pretty good knack at predicting things. Famously in Metal Gear Solid 2, he kind of predicted how the internet would go now. And in 2019, a few months before the pandemic began, he posited a world where everyone is trapped indoors and has to order things over like Amazon and Deliveroo. And it's all about and the game's all about connecting with people and stuff like that. So he was weirdly prescient.
Is he predicting, or is he secretly the cause
Good point.
of everything that's happened?
It's time we looked into that. I always knew not to trust that dude. Yeah, so this is a game about you walk across these landscapes. Not just walk, but the kind of primary thing is walking. It's like you can run, but there's like stamina meters and stuff. And also the ground is very unstable. There's lots of little crannies. So just walking across the landscape is in itself a bit of a challenge. It's not just holding up on the analog stick for 20 minutes or anything. You've got to like work out, oh, you can go up this sort of thing. Okay, this is maybe a bit too steep, but if you go around here, you can do that. You'll come up against, obstacles and stuff. You've got to find ways around. You've got various tools you can use. There is, even though it sounds, there was a pejorative term for games called walking simulators for a while, which just meant that there was no game, but you just walked around and looked at an environment. This is a more literal walking simulator. You literally walk, and it employs the challenge of walking. In the first game, for some reason, because of all the stuff that happened, I guess, America now looks a lot like Iceland, because it's set in America, and the whole point is that you are connecting bits of America back up together into this like fancy network called the chiral network. So that's the whole point of what you were doing in that first game. Also in the first game, you had a baby strapped to you the whole time in this it's actually more of a fetus in this like glass pod. And the baby let you see the ghosts. That was what that was there for. But also you form a bond with the baby. A bunch of stuff happens. I won't give all the plot away, largely because it would take me an hour to explain most of it. But by the end of the game, the baby's out of the pod, and Sam is now the effective father to the baby. So this new game starts a year or two later, and the baby's getting a bit older, and Sam is asked to go on a mission to go connect up Mexico. And that's basically just the tutorial is doing Mexico. And then there are some plot things that happen. And then you go to Australia through a weird portal that opened. And now you have the rest of the game, the bulk of the game is connecting up Australia. So I was a huge fan of the first game. I just felt like what I really liked about it was that it had, and hold yourselves back from being too impressed for me saying this, but I felt that it had very high...
Not making any promises, Alex.
I felt that it had very high ludonarrative cohesion. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh. Like ludonarrative dissonance, but good.
Yeah, it's the opposite. Because the whole story is Sam, the guy you're playing, Norman Reedus, he's like a loner. He hasn't connected to anyone. He doesn't trust anyone. But over the course of the game, he opens up to other people, and by the end of the game, he's got like a group of friends who all love him, and he connects with this baby as well. So it's all about him opening up as a person. And in the gameplay, the way it works is when you first approach an area that you need to hook up, the first time you go to one of these bunkers or whatever, they're not in the network.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going there to connect them. So as you approach it, it's like very kind of bleak kind of look, but bleak in like the way a wasteland is bleak. Quite beautiful in its bleakness. Like these beautiful landscapes, but you're like it's very empty. There's no one there. There's no indication that there's anyone there. And you slowly walk there, and you kind of like appreciate that kind of beauty and that solitude. And as you arrive at your destination, you hook them up to the network, and it does a kind of thing a bit like Dark Souls, where it has all these like things that other people have put in their games. They appear in your game, like the messages and stuff in Dark Souls. In this case, it's various like structures that can do things. Like for instance, you can get like basically a little motorbike to drive around on, or later on you can get a little mini truck to carry packages. They're all battery powered, so someone might erect a generator that charges these things as you use them. And when you emerge from your bunker or whatever, you see a bunch of these things littering the place. It feels kind of bad. You're like, oh, that stark beauty is gone. Now it's marred by all this stuff that people put in the environment. Because they can also like leave little signs and stuff around. And you kind of see this stuff all over the place. So you kind of feel like, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I'd stayed in solitude. But as you play the game, over and over again, you find something that someone left. It's just like absolute lifesaver. Oh my God, I've just run out of battery and what am I going to do now? I've got all this stuff. Oh, I just found a generator. Oh, finally, I'll be okay. Thank God that person left that there. You can build bridges people build bridges over the over rivers and stuff and chasms, leave ladders to get up cliffs. There's a huge kind of mega project in the middle of the game where there's a road network. This is in the first game. There's a huge road network that you can slowly build by gathering materials, which you get at these bunkers. And this means you have to literally carry the materials from the bunker to the place where the road is constructed. But eventually you have this huge road that like has automatic battery power on it. So you can just drive around the entire thing and easily get from place to place. And this is also, the material is also added to by other people online. So there's this real sense of like community, and you start to like, oh man, you love that people have left these things here. And it's kind of just like, it's interesting the way it kind of communicates both the kind of positives and negatives of both being alone and being with people, You have this sense
What
of
are the negative parts of being with people in the game?
when you first come out of the bunker and it's all this stuff around, the stark beauty is gone. You're like, oh,
I see.
it's like kind of marred. I liked the feeling of like walking along and being alone with my thoughts, and I didn't, sometimes they're like, why have they put a whatever thing there? That's a stupid place to put. I wouldn't have put a bridge there. I wouldn't have put a generator here. Occasionally, people have found ways to like troll and like put things. Oh, it turns out if you put like a car in this specific place, it fucks people up. That's largely been removed, but still, it kind of mars that feeling. But then, as the game goes on, you really appreciate it more and more, and that really ties in with the actual themes of the game. So that's all the original Death Stranding. Death Stranding 2 pretty much is kind of more of the same. It's like that. Everything I just described is pretty much there as well. There is also a giant road network, except now the road network is bigger. And there's also a monorail network. So there's just more things to build. There's a new story and everything. And there are a lot of, quality of life changes. And there's like a big menu system. They've improved a lot. They're like little things. One of the things in the first game is that there is combat, but it really disincentivizes you from doing any of it. Because as I mentioned, if people die, if their body isn't disposed of, that it causes basically a nuclear blast. And this can just happen in the game. If you kill an enemy and you just leave them there, eventually it will explode and you'll have a colossal crater in the middle of your map. So this is something you'd really want to avoid. So you would only use like non-lethal stuff in the things, and eventually you just start like avoiding combat entirely. So there's a whole section of the game that you would just avoid. In this game, the combat is a lot better. There's a lot more options for non-lethal combat, and there's also more times in the game basically tells you to go do some combat. You like have to get something from some bandits to deliver it somewhere. So the combat's a lot better, but to be honest, I think like on a pure gameplay stuff, I prefer the first game. I think the second game, as I said, is set in Australia, and I'm no expert on Australian geography. I think the world is based more truly on the actual kind of landscape of Australia. And the landscape of Australia is beautiful in many ways, but it doesn't have the same kind of feeling of stark beauty that the Icelandic environment had, that they just decided they were going to put in America. So it just hasn't got that, I feel, that kind of sense of beauty. And also because they've sanded off so many of the edges, like it feels like quite early on, you don't do much walking anymore. Quite early, you get some vehicles and then you're just driving to and from everywhere. So in the end, I didn't really do that much of the walking, and it just felt like it kind of lost some. So I was a bit disappointed with it. It's also, but really, it's really more of the same. It's even got like the same kind of basic structure. Like there's a tutorial in a separate section, and then you go to the main big map, which is a big map that has a road network. There's even like these sections where in the sequel, where you, for various plot reasons, get sucked into this weird dimension where you're in a battle and you're fighting these skeleton soldiers. That exact same thing happens in the first game for different plot reasons, but it's still the same thing. So it's just like it feels very similar. There were the worst thing about the first game was there were these bosses that were terrible, which is real sad. because Kojima's known for some great bosses. The bosses in Death Stranding 2 are much improved, so that's good. But yeah, you look like you're about to ask me something.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how does you said that there's much more occasions that you did combat in the second game. From what you were describing the first game, I thought it sounded quite kind of interesting to make it to like so heavily incentivize you to avoid combat situations. Is the shift like overall a positive thing, or does it sort of sounds like maybe it would make the game a bit less distinct or a bit less unique?
I see what you're talking about. The thing is that the original game did have some quite extensive combat. You just never did it. Like there's quite a lot of stuff you can do with the combat, and like Kojima, is known for stealth combat and stuff, and there was elements of that hit there. So it is just fundamentally more fun to be able to do that. You can still avoid it. You can fully stealth it, though. Like as I said, because there are so many of the edges sanded off, it becomes a lot easier. For instance, in this game, as I said, you can get a van, basically. In this one, you can mount guns on it, non-lethal guns. So I had my van with these 2 non-lethal machine guns on the top of it. And I would, it would keep saying, like, oh, you need to get into this camp and, get this, complete some objective, pick something up or destroy a machine that's doing something bad or something. And they're like, oh, maybe you want to stealth it. Maybe if you want to avoid everyone, you can, maybe that's easier. So they keep trying to make me do stealth, but instead I would just drive my tank with 2 machine guns on the top and just shoot everyone. And I won every single battle like that. Almost every single battle. Towards the very end, I had to get a bit more creative than that, but not even that much more creative. Like I would have to get out of the van occasionally and shoot someone, then get back in the van and mop up. So, it's kind of like, I feel like that shouldn't have been possible. Partly that's on me. I could have made it more difficult for myself. There are higher difficulty levels, which would probably make it more interesting. But yeah, I mean, in the original game, there are just like these camps of these bandits, basically, that are there. And mainly what you do is just drive and walk around them. And that's it. There are points in the game where it like forces you into clearer, like those fantasy sections where you fight skeleton soldiers, for instance. That's just straightforward fight, shooting them, right? So there is that in the game. Yeah, I think it's probably a bit better to have some quote unquote proper combat in there. But yeah, it does lose some of the distinctiveness. There's no doubt denying it. What I probably should talk about though is the politics of these games, and that means getting into the story, which is super weird. So the main thing that Death Stranding 2 is about is actually not that political. It's mainly about him saying goodbye to Metal Gear, because there's this character, this guy who turns up in these alternate dimension sections where you do fighting, who just turns up and immediately puts on this bandana. And Solid Snake is famous for wearing a bandana. So this guy is obviously meant to represent Solid Snake. And there's a lot of kind of relatively subtle references. I mean, subtle enough that he probably won't get in legal trouble. References to Metal Gear in this game. And basically that guy is meant to be Solid Snake. And he's upset that Sam Bridges has kind of replaced him, which is why he's fighting him. So he's here to fight against this. I think that basically that baby from the first game, I think was meant to represent the hope that Kojima could somehow get hold of the Metal Gear license again somehow. Like maybe he could just license from Kojima and make Metal Gear Solid games again. But this is despite him. Every one of those games, he said, "This is my last one. Someone else make more games, not me." And then he would go back and do it. And he's still upset that he can't make Metal Gear games. And this game is basically about him saying, "Okay, I'm moving on. I'm never going to get Metal Gear. That the hope that I'd get this back is dead." Basically, this has a kind of a send off to sort of Solid Snake. He basically literally gets to go to therapy to cry about how the American government made him do bad things. That literally happens in this game.
Okay.
Which is basically what happened to him in the Metal Gear Solid games. He like every single game, the American government would get him to do something, and then it'd turn out that they had less than great motives in doing so.
Is this emotionally effective, or does it feel a bit self-indulgent?
I mean, if you're not up for self-indulgence, do not engage with Hideo Kojima. It's all self-indulgent, baby. It's been self-indulgent from day one. having like a
always has been.
so like someone pointed out that the final cutscene of Metal Gear Solid 4 is literally like an hour and a half long. It's longer than an actual movie. That's how long that final cutscene.
Jeez.
So self-indulgent. You got to be up for it, mate. You got to be up for it. You're entering Kojima's world. We're just living in it. So that's kind of what this game is about. But there is a political angle. So in the first game, and I felt genuinely embarrassed I had not considered this until I played the second one. But throughout the whole game, you are kind of chasing after this woman called Amelie, who is sort of at the same time. I mean, explaining how this is the case is very complicated, but sort of at the same time, she is Sam's mother and her sister, and also the president of the United States. She is the alternate version of the president of the United States, in a way, who dies early on, but she stays around.
Ted is old as time.
Yeah. And her name is Amelie. There is also a sexual element to this. Like, he's clearly kind of ethereally beautiful, and he's kind of taken with her. And then at some point in the game, this is a spoiler, it turns out that she is what's called an extinction entity. So she's like inherently there. She was like born with this impulsion to somehow bring about the final extinction of humanity through various ways.
Well, we've all got to have a hobby.
Yeah. And then at the end, Sam has to shoot her, but he can't do it. He can't shoot her. So instead, you have to run up and hug her and kind of just like encourage her not to do the extinction of humanity. And she says she's not going to. She's not going to do it, but it still will probably happen eventually, even if it's like in 100,000 years. That's basically the end of that. And I realized that Amelie represents America because Kojima loves America. Anyone who's played his games knows this, right? All the games are about America and how they do stuff. He's obsessed with American movies and American pop culture, and he loves America. But also, these games are about how America is bad. Every single one of these games criticizes American foreign policy in some way. Some have theorized that he is like on the left. I know Hassan Pike is a fan of this theory. There's a video by The Clavicle, I think his name is, on YouTube. They does it. And this is on the basis that in one of the games, Snake teams up and the player teams up with the Sandinistas from Nicaragua, who are leftists, who fought against the Contras, American-backed Contras in the 1980s. And also in that game, they talk at length about how much they love Che Guevara. I think that's a bit of a stretch. I think a lot of people think Che Guevara is cool without being a leftist, right? But he definitely has good opinions on like American foreign policy. So I should say, I think I buried the lead a bit. Amelie is that woman's name. They do say that Amelie is short for literally the word America. Her name is literally America. And this represents Kojima's relationship, right, with America.
Could be a subtle hint.
Yeah. Even more so in the second game. I
don't know.
There is a bit where one of the characters talks about Amelie, and they literally play the Star Spangled Banner at the same time.
Right.
You're not getting it. Amelie is America.
I don't know, Alex. It feels like a bit of a reach to me.
But this is Kojima's.
Misread it, you know.
Yeah, this is Kojima's relationship, right? He loves Amelie. He loves America. He's entranced by America, and Sam is entranced by Amelie. But ultimately, America's going to destroy the fucking world. And he really doesn't want that to happen.
But if you ask nicely and give it a hug,
well, exactly,
they won't do it for 100,000 years.
He's saying, like, oh, I can't bring myself to kill, quote unquote, America. I will embrace America. I will show them how much I love them, and hopefully that will encourage them not to destroy the world. Cool. I'm not saying it's a good ideology. I'm saying that's what's there. And there's less of this in Death Stranding 2. As I said, it's mainly a metatextual thing about Metal Gear and his kind of Kojima's feelings about what happened with Kojima with Konami. But there's this, at the beginning of the game, you meet the new president of America, who is literally, he has on the back of his neck, like branded, the word APAC, which is in the game, APAC, APAC, is the name of like the automated, basically after the first game, Sam delivered all these packages to people and connected them all to the network. And then they were replaced by these robots that are literally these little platforms on legs that walk around the environment and carry packages. And the thing that manages that and also this AI computer system is called APAC. But AIPAC, AIPAC, is the name of the Israeli lobby group that has huge influence over American politics. And frankly, I think this is probably a coincidence. But the fact that the president literally has APACs embossed on the back of their neck is probably an unintended political statement. But in general, guess what? It turns out the president of the United States isn't entirely on the level in this game, and you might want to watch out for that guy. Overall, it's basically the first game was about connecting people. The second game, the subhead in the marketing, the subheading is the slogan is "Should we have connected?" But what that really means is like essentially that message is get off your damn phone. It's just like we need to connect with the people in person. We can't just do it remotely. We need to really, stop working from home. Come into Kojima Productions next week, please. Yeah, that's basically that story message. But so there's less of the American stuff that was mainly in the first game. But I'm always down for it. These stories go so weird. This game gets so weird by the end. I mean, probably the weirdest he has ever got. I mean, there's weird shit that happens towards the end of the game that I could not believe I was seeing. Yeah. Actually, there is one other thing I should talk about, which is the gender politics of Kojima. So he's a Japanese guy, and you know what? He likes ladies. He likes looking at ladies. This has always been very clear from his games. Usually he finds some sort of excuse to have the female characters turn up in their underwear. Some a lot less good than others. Famously in Metal Gear Solid 5, one of the characters is this like sniper who you can call on the battlefield for you, and she basically wears a bikini. She's like based on some real life model. Her name's Quiet, and people took exception of this at the time before the game came out from the trailers and so on. And he made one of the all-time tweets when he declared of people who are judging her looks before playing the game without knowing the full context behind it, they will, quote, regret their words and deeds. One of the great all-time tweets. Regret their words and deeds. No, they didn't. It turns out there's an incredibly flimsy reason for her wearing so little clothes. And she...
hard to believe.
In fact, she is, for various story reasons, kept in a cage on your main base. And you can just go and watch her as she just goes about her day, including taking showers.
Okay.
No.
She's just hanging out. I mean, she knows she's.
I thought I was going to have the game with the worst gender politics.
It's far from the game the worst gender politics. I'll say that. In Death Stranding, he dialed it back a bit, but Leia Sado is in the game, the real life actress, who's a big part of the sequel as well. And she is a character called Fragile, and it is revealed, and this is a bit of a spoiler, that the bad guy of the game, for various reasons, one time kind of essentially tortured her by forcing her to go and stop a nuclear bomb from going off. But they put her in her underwear and put a motorcycle helmet on her and forced her into the time fall. She wanted to stop this bomb going off. She'd have to run into the time fall, which, as you might remember, makes time advance. So basically, everything below her neck is like all withered and old. But you don't see it except for in this one cutscene because she wears clothes, and wears gloves and stuff. But basically, this is like a really kind of overwrought, emotionally loaded. It's intrinsic to a character. Why we have to have a full cutscene where you get to see Leia Sado in her underwear for quite a long time. That's pretty clearly what he's doing, right? This game, I guess he
makes you think.
He had some restraint. You don't see any of the women in their underwear. It's worth saying he is something of an equal opportunities offender. Solid Snake would frequently wear these very tight outfits that had like very well-defined buttocks. You'll enjoy this, Sofie, since you're such a big fan of Norman Reedus. In both Death Stranding games, you can anytime you can make him have a shower and you can just watch him in the shower.
I don't like that.
You'll love that,
I
Sophie.
don't like that. I do feel like when it comes to, I guess, the way he does it to men, though, it definitely
I
feels
know,
like it's coming from a
I'm not
comedic
really saying the same, but I'm just saying
perspective.
it's worth saying.
Yeah.
It's worth saying. But so he does have a bit of restraint in this game, but there is a weird thing where in this game you have like a kind of a mobile base, this ship that can basically teleport places. Explaining how it teleport places itself is a huge explanation. But it means you've got like a mobile base that you can hang out in. You've got a room in, and over the course of the game, kind of these three women appear on the base. There's Fragile, Leia Sado, as I mentioned, Elle Fanning, playing a character called Tomorrow, and this woman whose name I forget. She's not that famous an actress, but she's like a Japanese American, or Japanese British, I think. But she played Yukio in the Deadpool movies. If you've seen those, all three of them end up on there for plot reason. They're all important to the plot, but on that ship, they keep having bits where there's just an opportunity to see three cute girls doing cute things together. They just hang out. They're just hanging out, being cute. Eventually, you are given a Polaroid camera, and you can go into photo mode where you can take photos of the three girls just doing cute things. They're like you can choose what room they're in, and you can choose some other things about it, and they just hang out doing cute things. Like, for instance, a room you can take pictures of is the armory where you keep all your weapons, and the girls can be there and they can be like doing like little gun poses, pointing a gun, woo, pew pew, and they're just being cute, and you can take pictures of them, and it's just a really weird energy. Like, especially these are like real actresses. Leia Sado is like a well-respected actress. Elle Fanning's been in stuff, and then you're like, oh man, I can make Leia Sado do kissy faces while I take pictures of her. It's weird, undeniably.
Yeah,
So
it feels weird.
Kojima definitely has weird
Not sure about that.
attitudes towards women, but I don't know. I can't. Maybe it's bad that I think this. I'm not dying on this on a hill for this position, but he just kind of, there's just an earnestness to it. This is his art. He's just putting what he clearly likes, what he's into this game, compared to something like, I don't know, Stellar Blade, which was the game all the weirdo gooners obsessed over. That feels like a game that has like a scantily clad lady doing sexy things purely for the sake of marketing. People want to buy that, so they put it in the game. Whereas this feels like an honest and earnest expression of Kojima's weird sexuality and feelings coming out into his art, and I feel like you can't really judge it as bad. It feels like it's a true thing about the way he feels, and so I feel like, I mean, it's probably right that he's reined it in a bit, but at the same time, I find it hard to be too upset about it.
I mean, I don't know. I think I can judge it. I can judge it.
Yeah, I
because
wouldn't judge
think
anyone.
I think when perverts also do, weird shit to women, that's also a true reflection of how they feel
That's
about
true.
women.
That's true.
So,
That's true.
so I think I could judge it. I think I'll judge it. Yeah, it's giving
Well,
Murakami,
I mean, there are good female characters in his game. It's true. That Fragile is a good character, probably like the best. She's basically, a love interest for Sam to a degree. Sam's kind of weird. Apparently it literally says somewhere, I didn't see it in some codex entry, that he is a demisexual. So good for him, I guess. But they're not like super passionate or anything, is my point. So, it's not like he can't write female characters, but he can't really help himself from sexualizing them, at least somewhat. And I will say the one in Death Stranding 2 is like the most innocent of all of them. There's kind of just more like, oh man, they're just being cute. I just like him.
The photo, that's a weird vibe.
No,
Yeah, I feel like that's a weird vibe. I don't think
It feels like one of the weirdest ones you've said so far.
It's presented more just like taking photos of your friends hanging out.
No, because
I mean, I will say no. It's like genuine. It's like part of the plot. They're like, oh, remember this photo?
No, I know. It does. I think it does have a weird vibe, though.
It does have a weird vibe. I'm not denying it, but I'm just saying it's the most offensible of all of them. Is my point. I'm not saying there's definitely a sexual element to it. I'm not denying it. But this is the most that you could go there. And also, it's worth saying these are like relatively well-known and powerful actresses who really don't have to be doing this game, and they know about it. They were literally promoting this with him. So to a certain degree, I'm like, well, seems like they're relatively okay with it. they're not being, Kojima needs these actresses a lot more than they need him, right? This isn't a situation where he can really take advantage of them, I think. So, well, I don't want to defend him too much, but I'm here for Kojima. These games are so weird and they're like so big and so high budget. I think it's just great that it's possible that games like this can be made. It's like fucking if Jodorowsky had a fucking colossal budget in movies,
Yeah. Well, we can hold the two things at once, can't we?
Yeah, of course.
We can
And
say
that's the thing, right? I mean,
sounds-
that's why I'm saying it's giving Murakami, is because like I love Murakami's writing. He's a Haruki Murakami. He's a magical realism writer. For those who don't know, he's obviously also Japanese. But like I love his writing. I love his writing style. He just can't not be sexist about women. He just can't not do it, and it's so frustrating because like I recommend his writing to people, but I have to say, yeah, no, he's like a massive sexist. He has a really weird relationship with women. He cannot be normal about women. He writes women really weirdly. Even if he has written a couple of okay women in the past, most of the time, the women characters that he writes are basically just tits that speak occasionally. So like genuinely, so like it's giving Murakami in the way that it's like, yeah, I think he's a great an artist, right? But it's like I could still also be like, man, you should really be able to rein this in.
I don't think Kojima is anywhere near that bad. And I mean, to a certain degree, he is working in a medium that included, for instance, those scenes in God of War we were talking about. So maybe the bar is a bit lower for him.
I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not.
I think we should move on from this, but I just think the photo thing specifically sounds weird because it like puts you in the position of like a voyeur.
Yeah. And it sounds like they might have been presented a bit childishly as well.
There are much more weird photo modes in the previous game. I will say that.
All right, I believe you. I've not played any of these games. So.
I do recommend. Look, everyone should play at least Metal Gear Solid. It's a great game, and like it's really important to the medium. Everyone should give it a go. But yeah, Death Stranding 2, very good. I'm a little bit disappointed. It didn't progress things as much further than the original game as I'd hoped. But yeah.
Yep.
All right. So I think we're moving on to the next one, which is Sofie. Sorry, that makes it sound like I'm objectifying you. The one is the game. The one is the game. You're a person. I've already got myself in hot water exposing myself as a massive sexist already today. I don't need to.
You're on thin ice, young man.
Don't need to extend that further. So let's hear from Sofie about Animal Crossing.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know how much I'll have to say about this. As I said, I've only literally just started playing it. So I've just started playing Animal Crossing New Horizons on the Nintendo Switch, which was very generously given to me by Alex, who wasn't using his anymore because
that's very nice.
The brand
I got a
new
Switch
too.
And so I handed it over. I'm not that generous. You can wind in your
you could have sold
opinions
it to me,
of me a little
and
bit.
I'm very glad that
listener.
you didn't. You could have sold it to me, and I'm glad that you didn't.
No.
But yeah, just reading the Wikipedia page, just summarizing it. Animal Crossing is a 2020 social simulation game developed and published by Nintendo for the Nintendo Switch. Basically, in the game, the player controls a character who moves to a deserted island after purchasing a getaway package from Tom Nook, accomplishes assigned tasks, and develops the island as they choose. They can gather and craft items, customize the island, and develop it into a community of anthropomorphic animals. So, like, I feel like we have many of these sort of genres of games, these like move to a place, start a community, Stardew Valley being also an excellent example of the similar sort of thing, create relationships with other characters, etc. I guess Stardew Valley has romances and stuff. And they're always kind of a hit, like if they sort of have enough detail in them. So I'm playing it on the Switch at the moment. Like I said, I haven't gotten that far into it. I've literally just crafted a vaulting pole, which has allowed me to cross a river on my little island, which I didn't know was going to be a thing. Very exciting, very exciting. Yeah, I guess the main thing that I'm going to be talking about, because in terms of that's the thing, right? I don't really know how much I need to talk about the gameplay loop. It's like it's all quite standard, right? You craft things, you collect materials, you sell things. Well, I guess once you arrive on the island, you are saddled with a particular debt, which is the debt of moving to the island, which Tom Nook tells you about when you've sort of arrived. And I guess he's starting this community, but also you're paying him to move there. Some interesting sort of relations there. So you arrive on the island, and Tom Nook tells you that you owe him like 49,000 bells or something like that, which is the in-game currency. But, he's going to very generously instead make it basically 5,000 Nook miles, which is a separate currency that you can earn from doing sort of tutorial tasks and basically an achievement system where you earn basically 300 Nook miles, I think, per milestone reached. And immediately when the miles thing came up, I thought, okay, I'll talk about this on on Red Barrels, because like I think it's so interesting that you start the game and immediately have two currencies to work with. I understand as well that there are more currency further on as well, and there's also like more ways to earn money in terms of like the stock market and stuff. So I think it gets into speculative trading as well, I've heard. I don't know that much about it yet, but yeah. So I kind of thought, okay, I could talk about this.
I think we should just clarify for anyone listening who has managed not to play Animal Crossing that when you say in-game currencies, this isn't like in-game purchase. You can't buy it with real money or anything. This is just all internally in the game.
Yeah, I didn't think. Yeah, I don't think that was very ambiguous. But yeah,
no. But
yeah,
I just mean like
yes.
when people say in-game currencies, that has a inherent thing that like, oh man, I've got to spend. That's like free-to-play game stuff. It was just making clear that that's not what's going on.
Right. Yeah. So two in-game currencies. One of them is a sort of miles program, which I guess seems to be likened as, it's kind of like an air miles program. The sort of relation to its conversion rate to actual currency is kind of ambiguous and strange. And I've always found air miles and like the economy of air miles to be very interesting. There's a very good YouTube video. I forget who it's by. There's a very good YouTube video basically describing how airline companies have made their own economy when it comes to air miles, in that like they used to be worth a lot. They're now pretty much worthless depending on how much you actually fly. And obviously it's its own internal economy. You can only earn points by flying those flights, and then you can use those points on the flights. A very sort of interesting and like hyper-capitalistic, like sort of post-capitalism way to develop a currency. So I've paid off my first debt, which is very funny because when I talked to my housemate and I was like, oh, I've been playing Animal Crossing New Horizon. And he was like, oh, did you pay off your debt yet? And I was like, yes, I did. And he goes, which one? So that was also kind of a very big indicator. So yeah, for like quite an idyllic, paradise looking game, you're saddled with quite a lot of debt immediately. And I actually found it like a little bit, not quite stressful. It's not quite the word, but like a little bit, I have to pay off a thing immediately. I hope he's not going to bug me about it. And he didn't bug me about it, but he was, actually, he was at some point just like, need I remind you about your like debt of like moving to my island? Which I guess like Tom Nook is basically he's created this island so that he can also create an economy on this island. So it's kind of insane that you're having to pay a debt to this man who is in control of the entire, I say man, it's a tanuki. He's like a raccoon dog. It's a Japanese animal. And obviously everyone is an animal, except for you. You're a human being. Everyone is kind of beholden to this character to survive on this island, whilst also he has created the economy of the island. Like, it didn't have an economy before he created it. So yeah, it is just kind of a bit of a neoliberal nightmare, and it feels a little bit like seasteading in the way that we've just sort of come to this island and he's established the economy and he gets to decide what's profitable and what isn't and in what currency, and also how you pay him back and stuff. And yeah, so I guess opening the floor to you. I'm contractually obligated as well. A friend of mine really wanted me to call Tom Nook a bastard, and I do think he seems like a bit of a bastard, to be honest.
He's a bastard.
He's a bit of a bastard. So I'm opening the floor. I guess let's talk about the economy, the economics of Animal Crossing. What are your thoughts?
It's a bold move to start you off in that kind of debt, isn't it? I mean, it very much changes the vibe.
Yeah,
it can change the vibe if that's the sort of thing that that's the sort of thing that we notice in a game. I guess maybe some people who play it don't even really think about it.
The meme that Tom Nook is a ruthless capitalist landlord bastard is quite well established. It's not just a...
It is. Yeah, I mean, I like the game though.
I'm enjoying it as well. I'm enjoying it.
How would, not to change the subject too much, but I mean, you've also played Stardew Valley, Sofie, haven't you?
Yeah.
How would you compare the two? Like, have you got a sense of which one you sort of initially prefer?
I feel like, I would say they're quite similar, right? I don't know. I guess at the moment I prefer Stardew Valley, but I played more of it, so it's kind of hard for me to tell. I find it a little bit more difficult, weirdly enough, to have direction in Animal Crossing from a gameplay perspective. I've had a couple of moments where I'm like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing. And like because the game, and I don't know how many games do this, but I do find it really interesting that I guess it syncs to your like real time and the seasons that you're actively experiencing. So it syncs to your hemisphere as well. So like right now I'm in, July in summer in the game, and I can catch seasonal bugs and seasonal fish and stuff. And I think that's a fascinating concept. I'm kind of shocked that more games haven't done something similar to it. But at the same time, my entire understanding of video game time has kind of gone out the window because like normally I would understand, if I go to bed, sleep for 24 hours, then maybe the task that I was supposed to do has been done, or the thing that I was waiting for has been done. But that just doesn't happen because you don't go to bed until you go to bed. So like just a very simple example is right in the beginning, you're setting up Blather's tent. He's this sort of like animal entomologist character. And you set up the tent and I was like, okay, all right, now what? And it just sort of sat there for the whole day while I was waiting. Like I played a lot of the day, like on Tuesday or something, and then I was kind of waiting for something to happen. And then I went to bed and woke up and played the next day, and now the tent was set up. And I was like, oh, so I think it needed like a real life night to happen. And that was just kind of really baffling to me in terms of the pacing. I feel like we have a certain amount of standard literacy for video games that like, when you sleep in game, things happen overnight or something like that, Especially in Stardew Valley, I feel like that's very much the case. Things happen at night. Things will grow overnight, things will spawn overnight, people will send you letters overnight. All of this stuff happens overnight. And I feel like in a lot of video games, nighttime is when a lot of things sort of happen off screen. So that sort of dynamic is really quite strange for me, I think. But I'm very interested in that dynamic. I think I think I prefer the characters in Stardew Valley just because I've met these two, anthropomorphic animals on my island, and it's really quirky but also strange that they all decide to call me by their own individual nickname. And I guess I believe that the islanders you get in the beginning are randomized from what I've heard from people talking about Animal Crossing. There's like this thing. I actually knew very little going into this game. Surprisingly, obviously, it's such a mainstream game. It was so massive in 2020, obviously, because it was like a game where you just simulated being outside with friends. So like, of course it was massive, right? But surprisingly, I've actually managed to glean very little about it. So I am actually having quite like a fresh take to it. And my fresh take was like, oh man, this Tom Nook guy seems to suck. And then I looked it up on the internet, and apparently that's obviously the meme around Tom Nook. But yeah, sorry, that was a very long answer to your question of which I would prefer. It's like at the moment, yeah, definitely Stardew Valley. But Stardew Valley also took me a really long time to get into, about basically 2-3 years, where I kept trying to play it and bounce off of it. And then one time I started playing it, didn't stop playing it for like 2 months, and then and then I haven't played it since
I
then.
definitely agree with with that about the direction though. I played Animal Crossing New Horizons for, I don't know, maybe about 10 hours or something, and then I was like,
what?
I just sort of faded away from playing it. It wasn't even, I was like, I didn't even think that, this is the last time I'm gonna play it, I'll put it down and not come back to it. It was just sort of like, every time I played it, I was like, not really quite sure what I was gonna do next. And I was playing it a little bit with a friend, like online during COVID, and it was nice to do that, but then it didn't really hold my attention too long. Whereas Stardew Valley, I've got like more than 100 hours in the game. Like I've put much more time in that, and I found that much more engrossing. I found my experience of playing Animal Crossing New Horizons was, it felt like I liked it. It felt like a small little holiday. Like I found it quite a relaxing experience. It was quite cutesy. Whereas Stardew Valley felt more like somewhere I'd want to live.
Yeah,
that's how I
sort
of felt about it.
I've never played Stardew. I played a bit of Harvest Moon, which is the farming sim game that Stardew basically completely usurped in the day, and I just didn't like the farming, so I never followed up on it. There was like, without the farming, like the idea of like the community, all the other stuff, like romancing the characters, all that stuff, or whatever. That sounds interesting, but then I'm like, but then I have to put a hoe in every single square on the ground, right? So I don't know, maybe I'll get into it one day, but I haven't. But Animal Crossing, yeah, I first played the original Animal Crossing. Well, there was an N64 version actually, only in Japan, but in the West was on the GameCube, and I got super into it. I played it for a very long time. I mean, yeah, I don't really go by hours, but it's kind of meant to be, and it ends up being a game that you play for maybe half an hour a day, and then you just do that every day for however long. And I did that for a long time. I paid off the debt entirely. You repeatedly when you pay off the first debt, he then says, "Oh, I added a new floor to your house. Now you've got another debt." And that happens like
That's
several
so
times.
anxiety
Uh,
inducing. That's like my
um,
work. I've had nightmares like
yeah,
that, like Kafka-esque nightmares like that, where it's like, oh, we did a thing that you didn't ask for, so where's the money? And it's
yeah,
like, what the fuck?
basically. But you do eventually pay it off, and I did.
Yeah.
But my kind of issue with Animal Crossing was something you'll find. So if you keep playing, is that eventually you'll get to the point where you leave it for a while and then come back, and it's maybe been a month or something, and you come back, and what happens is the village is full of weeds. It's covered in weeds. They're spread everywhere. And all the characters, all the other animals, they all complain that you've been away. They say, "Oh man, where have you been? I can't
Oh,
believe I haven't seen you."
really?
And that's quite touching and endearing. But what kind of
Yeah.
ruined it for me was when I talked to them again. So I talked to them once. They had their little spiel where they talk about how they haven't seen me in ages, and then I talked to them again, and they'd go back into their loop of the various things they said. And back in those days, when this game was pretty new, people weren't entirely clear about how it worked, like internally. And I played it, and I got really attached to all these characters, and I wanted to like do things for them. So like I thought so that they would like me better, and like there'd be characters that didn't really like me, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll do things for them, and I'll improve my stats with them or something. Basically, something a bit like The Sims. There was something going
Well,
on in the
Stardew.
background,
Yeah.
like meters and stuff, that like affection meters or whatever, and like maybe they had it with the other animals as well. And what I discovered after going away and coming back was no, it hasn't got any of that. It's literally it just has a giant list of generic responses that it will choose from at random when you talk to them. And then it's got like a handful of like specific responses in specific situations, like they haven't seen you in ages, or it's raining, or like it's Christmas Day, or something like that. They'll say something for those, but that's it. There's nothing beneath the surface. And so I just felt very disillusioned with it after that.
That's part of what I meant by feeling like it's more like a holiday, where
Yeah.
Stardew Valley is like somewhere I would live, because it feels like there's like it felt like there's a sort of surface level flatness to the game,
Yeah.
where there's lots of things to do, but like it doesn't get more complicated or like deeper exactly. Like it's not like you reveal more and more super interesting stuff. It's like the experience of visiting a city for a few days, where you sort of see a lot of the sites and have a good time and then leave. Whereas Stardew Valley, there was a bit more of like slowly working out how different things worked, and the seasons change, and suddenly all the animals are different, and like, you know, there's just a little bit, and like getting more advanced stuff, and there was just a little bit more of feeling like I was living somewhere and getting used to how it worked, and like uncovering how the game really functioned. I sort of feel like there's maybe I wouldn't be confident in that opinion because I've only played it for a few hours. So maybe there is hidden depths that I've not encountered.
Yeah.
Well,
But
this game is incredibly popular, and I'm very much a minority, so I certainly wouldn't take me as any authority on it.
That's the thing. I enjoy it, but I do think that like Stardew gripped me a bit more. And in terms of like, you know, being a social simulation game, sort of simulating that community, Stardew Valley does it a lot better in terms of just like each character has a distinct personality. Each character has distinct sort of takes on you when you first arrive, and all of them you can really warm up to. And obviously they all have distinct gifts that they like, and distinct moments where they'll open up to you and talk to you about their life and stuff. And I can already sort of sense that that's not the kind of experience you're going to get from the other animals in Animal Crossing, you know. And I think from that perspective, I think for me, maybe that is the most satisfying part of Stardew is the growing relationships. And also just the nitpickiest thing that I have is just that you can't choose where you place things in Animal Crossing. You just kind of have to just like chuck it out onto the ground. And I find that really annoying because it's like, how do I make things look good?
I mean, I think if you play a bit further, like a large part of the game is like making things look good, and like that version introduced a bunch of stuff where you can like mold things on the island and like like set up things. So there's definitely going to be a way to do that at some point, I will say.
I just mean in terms of like random placement, but maybe there is a way to do that. I also wanted to ask, well, I guess I'd need to wrap it up, but I was also curious about people's opinions on smartphones as in-game menus. as like a UI tool. I wondered if anyone had opinions on those.
I quite like it. I remember when I think GTA 4 had like an old school mobile phone, because that's how old that game is that you like chose to select from. And then GTA 5 had like an iPhone style smartphone. And then it just seems to like, I mean, in that game especially, they're going for, it's you're like living their real life a bit. In general, I think it's just a nice little kind of fun way to make a menu.
Depends on the game, I think. If it's meant to be like, if it's a game that's really trying to make you feel like you're somewhere that's real, and then like this is like a way of adding the reality, like you don't break the immersion by going to a menu, then I can sort of see the value of it. Otherwise, yeah, I don't think it particularly adds anything to do that. I don't know. I'm getting the sense that you're not a fan of it, Sofie.
I don't know. I remember being kind of just like when I got the phone in Animal Crossing, I remember feeling just a bit like, oh, that kind of breaks my immersion a little bit, because I don't know. I feel like it can be, I understand that it's like, as you say, if I want to believe it's a real place, I think it could be an effective menu. But I think a lot of the time, my first impression is just, oh, this is kind of a lazy way to use a menu system that I'm very familiar with. Like, we all understand how the apps menu works. And it feels like just kind of a, I don't know, like a potentially quite unimmersive way to have a menu in game, but that feels very familiar to the player. They're already quite literate with.
You don't think Tom Nook's dastardly enough to trap you into an unfair mobile phone?
That's the thing. I feel like maybe he's doing surveillance, If he gave me the mobile phone, chances are he owns the mobile phone technology and also the mobile phone network. So he's definitely doing surveillance on my phone. And he's definitely going to leverage that data against me in order to get another debt out of me in the future, where he's like, well, listen, I saw you talk about some very sensitive CIA secrets that one time. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you for another 10,000 miles. I just, just a little bit sus about it. But anyway, those are my opinions on Animal Crossing. I think maybe I'll report back in the future. But yeah, very, very dodgy, strange in-game economics, a little bit too IRL for me, a little bit too Seastead adjacent for me. But I am enjoying it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if you stick with it.
Yeah. Maybe give us an
may or may
update
not.
in a future episode.
It does just kind of make me feel like playing Stardew is the thing. I think that is the problem with it. Too. So yeah.
I think you should give it a go.
I'll stick with it. I'll stick with it, because I do like the IRL sort of connection there. I think that's really cute.
I think thinking of it like Stardew Valley, a game that you can theoretically just sit there and put hours into to like explore all its various crannies. This is a game that you play for, again, like an hour or half an hour.
Which I think I understand better now.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, well, that's everything about Animal Crossing. And now we're done with the games and we're on to the news. And first up with the news.
We're crossing to the news section. Am I right, guys?
Very nice.
Yeah. The segues I'm coming to expect from Ed, true professional of broadcasting, which is difficult to maintain with being the bad boy of the Red Barrels podcast, but he manages it with aplomb.
I contain multitudes.
Yeah, I've been saying it. But yeah, first up on the news, it's going to be me, and yeah, it's pretty bad news, as often tends to be the case. Xbox had a big old shedding of jobs. It's been pretty bad. And I will say, I think the timing, I don't think it's a coincidence that they announced this while I was editing the previous episode. And then we were going to take a break after that, so they got the least amount of scrutiny from the Red Barrels podcast. And I think that's on purpose. I'm going to say it. But
we've got them running scared.
Exactly. Well, maybe not scared enough, because they have fired around 9,000 staff. That's Microsoft as a whole. It's unclear exactly how many of those are from gaming, but it seems like many of those are from gaming. And it does seem to be one of the prime areas they have decided to shed a lot of staff from. This has had a number of immediate effects. Hundreds of people have been fired from King. They're the people who make Candy Crush. ZeniMax, the people who make the Elder Scrolls, well, ZeniMax is the name of the whole morass of companies that Microsoft bought, but specifically ZeniMax is online studios who make the Elder Scrolls Online. They apparently were working on a new MMORPG, which has been cancelled. outright. And they've been working on that since 2018. Everwild, a game that Rare was making, that was first announced in 2019, and then they showed a bit in 2020, and then nothing since. That has also been cancelled. It seems that was some sort of kind of more peaceful kind of monster hunter game. No one was really entirely sure what it was, which was perhaps part of the problem. There have been lots of reports that there were problems with it. So that it might be in trouble is maybe not that much of a surprise. Greg Mayles, who was the director of that game, has departed Rare. He's been there for a long time. If you're a fan of them, back in the N64 days, I remember seeing his name in the credits quite often. He's gone. But the kind of probably the biggest and most explosive thing is that Perfect Dark has been cancelled. This is a game that was announced, I think maybe around 2020, 2021. It was finally shown off last year. I mean, there was a full demo at Summer Game Fest or whatever the equivalent was, whatever, former E3 event. It was like pretty much the showpiece of their show. They really made a big deal out of it. And now the game is completely cancelled. And the entire studio that they formed a new studio to make this game called The Initiative. This was going to be their first game. That studio has been shut down entirely with no games ever to their credit. So yeah, it's pretty apocalyptic, frankly. Like a 9,000 or even a number close to that is way higher than any of these stories that you hear reported on this podcast or anywhere else. We were talking last episode about Mind's Eye that lost 200 jobs, and that was pretty bad. This is just in another league entirely. We'll talk about maybe the wider issues around it, but in a moment. But firstly, it's worth saying that Game Developer Mag website had a good article about the reactions from a lot of the employees and specifically the unions that are there. So Microsoft bought Activision a year or two ago now, that went through, and part of the deal they had with the relatively labor-friendly Biden White House that was around at the time to try and get this merger through was they basically had to be nicer to unions a bit. So as a result, a number of trade unions were established within Microsoft's or Xbox's studios, and that includes ZeniMax. ZeniMax Workers United and ZeniMax Online Studio United, who were all both involved in that MMORPG that got cancelled. They obviously not pleased. This is an excerpt from that article I mentioned regarding Autumn Mitchell and Paige Branson, who were both in the ZWU-CWA, which is the name of the union. They're both affiliated with the Communication Workers of America. They believe the layoffs would have been so much worse that ZeniMax had so many of its members not unionized. Hundreds of ZeniMax employees have successfully organized under the ZeniMax Workers United CWA and the other one, which I mentioned, banners, and those groups are now rallying together to provide support to each other. And they said, Mitchell, I believe, says, it's reassuring having an organization like CWA for people during this moment. Because if we hadn't organized and if we didn't have the backing of an outside organization that could fight for the people who have been affected and those who still retain their jobs, it would be night and day for people. It's incredibly helpful to have their resources behind us during this time. I remain very, very strong advocate for unionization across not just the video game industry, but the whole tech industry. So obviously, the unions weren't strong enough at this point to stop this, but it definitely seems like they are kind of ameliorating it for the people who are being fired and the people remaining. So that's good. But, this is obviously a pretty terrible thing to have happened. Ed, you have something.
No, I haven't got anything to say. Sorry,
you hold your microphone to you and yourself in such a commanding manner that
I'm just braced. This is it's a shit story. Sorry, I'm just
so
that fucking sucks. 9,000. Like what?
That's so many people.
Awful. That's awful.
So why this happened is of some debate. Microsoft gave a quote to Game Developer. They said, "We continue to implement organizational and workforce changes that are necessary to position the company and team's success in a dynamic marketplace." They added that Microsoft has a history of making the workforce adjustments to meet the strategic demands of the business, quote, even in the best of times, and noted the company is keen to increase its agility by, quote, reducing layers with fewer managers. So this is like pretty obviously an angle of saying, okay, we're firing huge numbers of people, but we also at the same time don't want to suggest to our investors that we're not doing well. So we are simultaneously doing great and also firing thousands of people, which is maybe good for their investors, is not really great for anyone else. But, a pretty callous form of kind of double speak. In general, for why I think this has happened, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that many in the tech industry, especially, of which Microsoft kind of, out of the big three console manufacturers, Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft is way more of a tech company than a game company. Obviously, Sony does loads of stuff other than the games, but they are, games are a very large part of their business. They have been for decades now. And Nintendo is all games, right? Whereas Microsoft is a tech company. And during the pandemic, games had a boom, obviously, because everyone was stuck at home and with not much else to do. So games just got a huge benefit from them. But because the tech industry is so fucking rubbish, and there's just full of the investors of those are idiots, they kind of just thought that boom would last forever, even though obviously the pandemic's not going to last forever. And when the pandemic ends, everyone's going to want to go outside again. So they probably overinvested, thinking that this is going to be sunlit uplands forever. But then it kind of petered out a bit. It wasn't that amazing. It didn't blow up the entire world forever. And now they've moved on to the next thing, which is AI. It seems that they are specifically firing all these people to free up money to invest more in AI. That basically seems to be what it is. But, it'll be something else after AI. AI, is probably going to have some lasting benefits, probably, but it's not going to, at minimum, it's due a crash before it transforms the world, right? And then they'll move on to whatever the next thing is. And unfortunately, the workers at Microsoft are the victims in it.
Yeah, just sucks. Just sucks. I did figure AI was I feel like AI is the cause for a lot of layoffs these
Sure.
days. It's just like, okay, all right, yeah, I'm just investing in.
Well, I mean,
instead, very depressing.
no doubt, AI, trying to replace the workers with AI is part of this, but it seems it's more they wanted to fire them to invest in AI rather. But still, it doesn't make much difference to the people.
I think that's likely. Yeah.
I mean, it's worth saying that Xbox has always been kind of a mess. They've only really had one good, unambiguously good hardware generation. The original Xbox, did all right made a name for itself and stuff, but it lost huge amounts of money. That was kind of okay because it was getting a foothold in. Then the Xbox 360 did genuinely well, and then the Xbox One was a fucking disaster, and now the Xbox Series consoles have been another disaster. And it's just bizarre. Like this Perfect Dark game that had been in production for since 2018, most of a decade. That stuff they showed last year looked nice, but it was hardly like the most incredible, ambitious game ever made. And apparently, Xbox just couldn't get it together to get that out of the door. And they just seem to have huge trouble just making video games in a way that
Is it like a tax write-off thing, like with that Batgirl film that they didn't release a few years ago?
No. I mean, the game's not finished or anything. That was basically the case. It was basically finished. I mean, it was probably due out this year or next year. I mean, who knows when they wanted to originally come out with it. I mean, I mean, there have been rumors that it was troubled for a long time, but I think it's down to mismanagement. And my suspicion, not that again, Nintendo or Sony are any our ideas of perfect organization, but I feel like it's just constant meddling from up top from people who don't really understand games, the games industry, or games as an art form. It said that basically it used to be that the entire Xbox division was like a tiny, tiny part of Microsoft, and they could basically get away with doing what they want because Windows and cloud services and all the other stuff that Microsoft does, that makes so much more money than Xbox that they just could go under the radar. But when they did the acquisition of Activision, that was like I think it's the biggest tech acquisition of all time. It's like huge amount of money. And that meant that now like basically the Eye of Sauron was on the Xbox division, and they just kept meddling and getting to, you know, obsessing over like short-term profitability and stuff like that. You know, it's a bad situation. It's bad, and of course, we'd be remiss in reminding our viewers that they are still under BDS. They still invest in, you know, all sorts of terrible stuff that aids Israel in a genocide. So that's yet another bad thing they're doing. So it really feels like there's just a complete mess there. And you know, I'd like them to, one, stop investing in Israel, and two, sort themselves out and, you know, make good games and be a good game company to at least to the degree that they produce decent stuff and don't fire all their staff constantly. And they just don't seem to have any real idea of how to do that.
Well, our solidarity.
100% solidarity with
those who've
everyone
lost their
working there
jobs.
and everyone who was working.
Awful.
Yeah, so shall we move on to Sofie, that has a bit less impactful, but also a bit more weird in a fun way story.
Yeah. So I'm going to try my best because this got a bit complicated when I looked into it. So basically, this is going back a little bit, but on July 2nd, key members of Unknown Worlds, the Subnautica 2 team, were essentially replaced by the owner of Unknown Worlds, Crafton, before early access. So basically before the early access of Subnautica 2 was sort of supposed to come out, they acquired Unknown Worlds in 2021. And at the time when they sort of replaced the lead team members, Crafton's statement included key phrases such as, quote, "Our players deserve nothing less than the best possible game as soon as possible," as well as talk of delivering the right game at the right time using, quote, "clearly defined metrics and targets," unquote. I guess basically implying that they were having, and they said quite clearly, they were having problems with how the game was being developed. So then basically they were then accused of replacing the development team very conveniently just before the development team would have been owed a $250 million bonus had the team met revenue targets by the end of the year. So Crafton says the delay was not influenced by financial or contractual conditions, but obviously a little bit sus, a little bit strange there. Crafton also insisted
I'm sure
that...
it's just a coincidence, Sofie.
Just a coincidence, just a weird little coincidence. Crafton also insisted that Unknown Worlds' leadership team had abandoned their responsibilities towards the game, saying specifically that, I don't have his full name, Cleveland, I forgot what his full name is, but basically the founder of Unknown Worlds, was more focused on a personal film project, which was Crafton's criticism. And now, the most recent news is that a lawsuit against Crafton, some documents have been leaked from the lawsuit, or not leaked, sorry, released from the lawsuit, basically, against Crafton, claims that Cleveland was working on a Subnautica film that was specifically asked for by the studio. So, yes, he was working on a film, but it's not really fair to say that it was distracting him from his responsibilities because the studio had actually agreed to work on this film and asked him specifically to do it. And then Crafton, there was a mysteriously leaked document, which then Crafton later actually confirmed was real, that describes the delayed Subnautica 2 as, quote, "currently lacking the freshness and volume expected of a sequel," which seems to back up their proposed reasons for taking over leadership of the Unknown Worlds Subnautica dev team. So we basically...
But who wrote that and who leaked it?
Exactly, right? Who wrote it and who leaked it? And it's very convenient that Crofton's like, that's real, guys. God, it really sucks that was leaked, but it is real. That's 100% a real document. But yeah, geez, it's really weird that got leaked. But yeah, I mean, you know, that is what we said internally without anyone looking. So yeah, I guess basically it's just a really weird situation where, just to summarize, I guess, is that Crofton basically booted the leadership team developing Subnautica 2. It has been undergoing several delays, seemingly just before a bonus was supposed to be paid to that dev team, and also saying that because the dev team was distracted with making a personal film project, but now the dev team has basically pushed back, saying that we were told to make this film project. It's not a personal film project. It's a film project for the company, for the game.
Yeah, but there are people in the film, so in that sense, it's personal. You know,
there's personal
yeah,
relationships
it's
in the
about persons.
film.
As much as I don't want to maybe take the side of giant conglomerate Crafton, there is actually a bit more to this story, which is that this Charlie Cleveland guy, he it does seem like he was genuinely kind of doing side shit on movies. He has an entire website dedicated to his movie company. He had this whole thing where he apparently had an idea for a movie that was going to be gangbusters, a Christmas movie that I think is called Nutmeg and Mistletoe. But the only thing he has for the movie are a series of AI generated posters for it.
Great.
In which
I think I've heard of this.
It's two lady elves kind of with their backs up against each other, kind of looking over each other at each other. I think these are both Nutmeg and Mistletoe. And it's going to be like Elf, apparently.
I mean, to be fair, it doesn't sound like that's been taken up too much of his time, does it?
Right? Exactly.
Well, I mean, he talks quite a bit.
He's managed to
Sounds
squeeze
like a
in
hobby.
the AI
He
prompts.
talks quite a bit on this website about all the stuff they're doing. And, I'm like, look, I think it's unclear what's going on. Also, I believe Crafton claimed that, like, the 250 million was, like, almost entirely going to go to, like, the two guys at the top. It wasn't it wasn't, like, for the workers.
No, yeah, I know, yeah.
So it's unclear, I don't know what's going on here, but there's just this weird stuff. And what's particularly notable about it is like how hard Crafton has gone on it. Like they literally just put out press releases that are like, yeah, these guys were defrauding us. They like, let's say some, what are usually like, oh, these are like, well, we've had some differences. Well, we can't discuss legal issues our own. But no, they've been pretty out there talking about their complaints about these guys. So it's pretty clear that some weird shit went on in this game. I mean, it would not surprise me that they specifically did this whole thing to avoid spending that 250 million. That's certainly true. But it seems like these two guys who run the place are also pretty weird. I would personally say that my sympathies go with
weird stuff going
the poor
on.
people who have to work at Unknown World.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
have to endure this. But
nonsense.
yeah, they're definitely the victims here. But yeah, it's just a bizarre circumstance. I just like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure we'll find out more in future, and maybe there'll be some more juicy details that'll come out of it. It definitely seems like a good source of juicy deets, and I'm always loving to hear them. But yeah,
just kind of juicy and strange, and that was my story.
Definitely strange.
The big two.
But I think we'll move on to the next bit of news, which is Ed.
Yep, I'm just giving an update to the Stop Killing Games campaign, which we talked about on the last episode. So there, if you recall, it was a campaign concerning the killing of games and how that should be stopped.
That's
it was about
incisive analysis we look to you for.
Exactly. But for more, I mean, listen to the last episode. But it was about developers who sort of stop their game functioning when they want to stop supporting it. So it creates a lot of lost media and all that kind of stuff. And there was a consumer campaign arguing that that's not really on. Effectively, to summarize, they have various petitions with various sort of governmental bodies, and that the main one was the EU petition, which is still open for another week. It closes on the 31st of July. They needed 1 million signatures for it to be sort of considered officially. And when we spoke about it a month ago, it had already been up for 11 months, and they'd got 500,000 signatures in that time. So that's why I sort of thought it was worth talking about, like it's a sort of video game consumer movement thing with 500,000 signatures. It seemed quite impressive. 1 month on, they're now at 1.4 million signatures.
Yeah.
So in the last month, they've received an extra 900,000 signatures. So the total at 1.4 million at time of writing is obviously above the threshold for it to be considered by the EU. So we'll see what happens with that. I just thought that was a very impressive, massive spike that's happened in the last month. There's obviously, presumably off the back of us covering it, been a huge increase.
How many of those 900,000 would you directly put down to your reporting on this matter?
I mean, I don't want to take too much credit, so probably only about 800,000 of them.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Let's be humble. And they obviously, I don't live in the European Union. I live in the free country that is the United Kingdom.
And thank God, right?
Thank God. And there's a separate one to the UK Parliament, which when we last recorded was at 27,000 signatures, having been open for 5 months. It's a 6-month period. That's now closed, and it closed with 190,000 signatures. So it's a similar sort of massive spike in the last month for both of these petitions. So that crosses the threshold of 100,000 to have this petition sort of debated in Parliament. I mean, I will say, I believe it's the case that no petition ever submitted to the UK government via their official petitions website has ever resulted in any change whatsoever. So I would submit that if we actually want to improve sort of consumer rights around video games, and of course also I'd be advocating involving a wider, I think we should be doing a broader campaign involving the rights of workers in the companies as well as the consumers. But what I think this story shows is the huge amount of interest in it. There's huge numbers of people, literally millions of people across Europe, who take part in this collective action, sort of somewhat mobilized in this. And petition's obviously a relatively limited form of mobilization, but it shows this huge constituency is there of people who could potentially be mobilized on these issues. So I think there's something exciting about that, even if I'm a little bit pessimistic about, at least at the UK level, what will come of them passing the threshold. I have to say I have much less idea of what happens at the EU level. Maybe they've got a very solid track record of it being listened to, but I have my doubts. But we'll see. But I think it's very exciting that there are millions of people, literally millions of people, who would take part in this kind of campaign. So hopefully something more broad-based, more with a higher degree of mobilization can follow on from this. And I'll be watching the Stop Killing Games campaign. I'm sure they've had these exact same thoughts internally. I'll be keen to see what they do next.
Yeah, I mean,
and maybe I'll report it back if you stay tuned in to the Red Barrel Pod.
Considering how incredibly servile the UK government is to whatever big tech wants them to do, just throwing money at them for AI-imagined solutions to things, I think it'll take a decent bit more than a petition to make these changes here, at least.
Yeah, agreed.
All right.
But cool.
Well, I think, you know what? I think we're done. I think that's it. I think that's it. Thank you for listening all the way through, as I know you must have done. But yeah, we're done. We're finishing up. As always, we would extol and beg and, just prostrate ourselves before you in asking that you share us on social media, tell your friends, review us on iTunes and Spotify, do all that. We're nothing. You're better than us, right? You're better than us. Show us some of your beneficence.
All or nothing.
Show us some of your beneficence and do those things. We would love you more than I love any family member. I would love you on that.
That's all right. Okay.
and to
Said it here first, folks.
Facilitate that.
I just want to make it clear that I love my family more than I love you for sharing us on social media.
Yeah, same. Sorry, chat.
Sorry. Guys.
My co-hosts don't have my dedication. So you can be assured of my affections. To facilitate you sharing us, you can find us on Twitter at Red Barrels Pod. You can find us on Blue Sky at redbarrelspodcast.bsky.social for personal link. You've been listening to me, Alex. Alex. Mark, you can find me, Alex, on at AlexDean, AlexDuin on Twitter, and at AlexDean, AlexDuin.bsky.social on Blue Sky. What about you, Sophie? How can people find you?
You can watch me on Twitch because I stream 4 days a week. Twitch.tv/SoFreely.
Or you can follow me. Well, not or. Do both. You can follow me on Blue Sky.
To choose.
At Not a Lemon. choose wisely. Or you can follow me on X at Still Not a Lemon.
All right.
So thank you for your time, for your attention, for your support. We can't wait to see you in episode 14. My God,
we're so excited.
Stuff we've got planned.
It's going to be incredible. Genuinely, we do have some exciting stuff planned for future episodes. We've got things percolating, ideas coming up. We got irons in the fire. Don't worry, they're coming. But until then, as always, the music, you heard it and you loved it. It was from Brilliant Drink. We love that guy. But basically, that's it. There's no more podcast after this. So
Stop
there's going to be another
Go
podcast,
away.
but no more of this podcast. So we are officially done. Goodbye.
Bye.